Hello and welcome to My Favorite Murder. Just kidding. Welcome back to another speed build. So today we are doing what am I going to call it? A coastal witch inspired house, like a seaside witch, but not a sea witch, like not necessarily Ursula from The Little Mermaid, more like, cutesy, whimsical seaside witch, maybe who lives in a seaside town and helps the townsfolk with her magic and her spells, perhaps for a little bit of money. She's a businesswoman, okay? She is not evil, but, she might have some spooky things in her home. But you can see here, this is built on, I think it's called the Dock Den lot in Windenburg. And I'm going in now, trying to do a little bit of some fun, I want to say terraforming, but this isn't Animal Crossing. I guess terrain manipulation is what we're going to call it. But I wanted to have a few levels, essentially kind of make it look like it's up on like almost like a cliff or like an outcropping along the sea. And kind of like did a little bit of back and forth with this because I knew that I wanted there to be like a balcony and like for it to kind of look like a dock almost. And then as time goes on, you can sort of see, I ended up deciding that maybe this house was made out of pieces from shipwrecks because eventually I add like a mast and a sail, and there's certain parts of the build that I try to sort of make look like the front and the back end of a ship. And of course, I wanted to use some rounded walls because that just says whimsical to me. So I went ahead and did that. And of course, it caused some problems because as anyone who has built with round walls in The Sims 4 knows, essentially, you can use them. That's fine and dandy, but the lighting gets a little funky. If you attach any other walls to the rounded part of the room, they have to line up in a very specific way. And then certain things get linked to them. So like if you delete or add a certain wall, then it's going to delete a portion of your rounded room. I don't know. It's just a whole to-do. Thank God we have rounded rooms. I think it's super awesome that we have that. Congrats, Sims team, for giving that to us. But it took, a little bit of messing around to deal with this. Going in to do some roofing here. That's another thing. Of course, rounded rooms, roofing is a little bit of a challenge, but I did the best that I could. This is a pretty whimsical build who shocked no one, but it took me a while. I don't even know how long it took me to build this. It was kind of over the course of like 2.5-ish, 3 days. Probably my longest video yet. So if you are looking to vibe a little bit, and maybe you're at work or you're doing some homework or whatever, you need to put something on in the background, I've got just shy of 30 minutes of content here for you. So please enjoy. You can see here I'm sort of trying to add some dimension to the build, giving it like, different colors on different sections so it's not just all one solid color. But I ended up using like this back door is from, I believe it's Movie Hangout, because I wanted to make sure this was like a very like sort of light pastel, colorful sort of build. My idea was that this witch who lives here, more than likely everything that she owns, she just sort of scrounges up from either, maybe it gets washed up on the beach. Maybe she loves to thrift. Maybe she just likes to, walk up around this seaside town and see what people have left on the curb. But she also has like a very eclectic style. There's a lot of mixed patterns on the inside of this house, which you will see eventually. But here we're finally pretty much finishing out the roof, or figuring out how the roof is going to work. And I do eventually end up adding like a tower on like the far left side of this. So you can see I like played with some other roof sculpture pieces and didn't really end up using any of them. But there's like going to be a tower on the left-hand side of this build that ends up having two little balconies off of it. One of them is going to eventually have a telescope. The other side is going to have, I think I put in a beehive and some plants. Since I figured, if you're going to be able to get up there, which you can, there is a ladder that goes up to the tiny little tower that I eventually add. You might as well have something up there. Sometimes I do put little towers on builds and they're not really accessible. This is not one of those cases. I haven't play tested this yet. That's probably what I'm going to do after I finish this voiceover. But we will see how that works out. Here I'm adding a little bit more to the build on the outside. I generally do outside first and then I switch to the interior. In this case, I pretty much did like the outside first and then I sort of slowly moved into making the interior, and then I think I did landscaping last. Oh, here we go, is the tower that I added. It kind of makes me think of like the Practical Magic house a little bit with how it looks silhouette wise for the house. Windows was a little bit of a challenge. Windows were a little bit of a challenge with this build because obviously I wanted it to seem kind of cottagey, but I was also trying to go for this theme where everything was sort of like scavenged. So I later went in and made sure like some of the windows weren't necessarily the same swatch and they were kind of mismatched, which was pretty fun. And I used like some debug pieces from around the world in Brindleton Bay from Cats and Dogs, since there's a lot of oceany things there. I've got like some buoy pieces hanging off of like the underside of like the deck that comes off of the house. I ended up putting like, it's like a fence with a netting on it, so like a beach kind of fence, like on one of the roof pieces. And then I've got like those like sort of sand, I don't know what they're called, like sand fences maybe is the term, that I placed along portions of like the yard for the witch. But I don't know, essentially I guess it was like a little Studio Ghibli-esque in the way that I was putting it together. And of course, with the ocean vibes, it made me think of Kiki's Delivery Service a little bit. You know, how she goes to that seaside town. And that's about the only connection, really. That and, like, It's a Witch. So I will probably end up making a sim for when I do final edits on this video to live here. And here you can see, I thought about cutting this out, but I ended up keeping it in, where I did the thing that a lot of people do, and I'm sort of new to it, but I think I finally sort of figured out how it works, where you take these like stone cliff pieces that are in debug for a lot of packs. Some of them are the same, frankly, I believe. And you like put them along the edges of any hills that you've made, so it looks more like a big cliff. So I have these pretty much all around the house, and that's pretty much the only place I put them. I do end up putting like a big rock in the corner of the yard, and I think like some of the rocks that I put underneath like the deck / porch area end up disappearing because they got sort of like linked to the platform, or I guess the foundation. And then I deleted something or changed something, or like the wall was extended and then the stuff disappeared. But for this front porch area, I ended up using these like rope fence pieces from Cats and Dogs Debug that are supposed to be like, you know, like a dock, sort of a dock pole with ropes hanging off of them. And it was really cool to use them. There was also like a practical purpose, because I think like the fence pieces I was trying to use like were messing with my curved wall, because it was trying to create a room. And fence pieces, unlike walls, you can't just like draw them and then pick them up and put them somewhere else to make quote unquote fake rooms. So that's what I ended up doing. I also used a lot of these werewolf flower boxes. I'm probably going to get called out for using them too much eventually, because I really like them. I think they are so good for this sort of like whimsical sort of build. And here you can see I'm going in this is something that I've seen people do, and this is my first time trying it myself, where instead of using like the like the actual wall plants that are provided, you take bushes and you shift place them and alt place them all the way up and down like linings of your roof, so it looks like this very lush, overgrown, not really ivy, but just like plants that are growing on the side of this house. So I'd like to think that whoever has lived here, I don't see it as being like a young, an old witch. I think it's like a young girl who lives here. And so like she's probably like been growing these flowers for a while. I'm sure magic helped, but she's been doing it for quite some time. Here you can see where I used the tool mod and made a mast for the front of the house, or I guess it's really like the side door of the house. I kind of used the Get Famous pirate ship as like a guideline, but didn't really try to copy it at all. And you can see I tried with like different things to use for like the bow head, I think it's called. People who know things about ships, let me know down below. I ended up using one of the sculptures from Vampires. It's like that lady who has like the very Morticia Addams sort of sleeves, and then I ended up putting like the little fairy gargoyle on the end of the pole. So at one point I like tried putting it on like the underside of the pole, and then I decided she was like sitting on the pole, and then I eventually ended up like adding like a hanging plant and a lantern off the end of the mast. It looks really cool actually, and of course it's technically off lot, the stuff that's hanging down, because I used the tool mod to move it. But I don't know, I had a lot of fun sort of digging through my creative muscles in making this. I sort of had like an idea of like a general shape of the house. I knew that I wanted like the rounded rooms, and then as I kept building, I like thought about how, maybe it's part of a shipwreck that she is like found in some way. So like the front side of like the build ends up having like the bow of the ship, and then the back is like sort of like what I imagine like that sort of rear captain's quarters area that you see on a boat. And I did a pretty good job, I think, of making it look like that eventually. Here I am jumping in, adding some lighting so that it's like kind of like got some ambiance, as the French like to say, at nighttime. So I ended up using like lanterns, some hanging lights. I don't know if I kept those lanterns that are hanging on the underside or not. Maybe I did, because I don't see that I'm deleting them. And there might be like some other additional edits that I made off camera once the build was actually done. I also did this thing where I like built a basement and then tried to like raise up planter boxes underneath the deck so they could be down there, because otherwise it tries to place them on the deck. You have to like cheat a little bit, and they are viewable, but only if you view like the bottom floor of the build, which is a little strange. I can't really explain why that happened, but well, I mean, I can. It's because of how the game works, and it's like, you want to build on this level. But here's the cauldron that I put inside this boat. I hope that it ends up actually being usable. I'll have to check that, but I thought it was a cool idea that she had like this old boat that she like keeps her cauldron in outside, maybe so she like doesn't smoke up the house while she's trying to brew her potions and her brews. And then I put some fencing around. It's the same fencing that I put on like the deck. It's also from Werewolves, but I just love it so much. It's got like that sort of cobbled together look, which is super cool. We've got a little bit of flowers that are actually meant to be wallflowers, the perks of being them, am I right, on the back side of the house. And then finally, we're going to the inside. At first, I think this was the first area I decorated, was like this sort of tower bit up top. And it ended up being sort of like a kid's room at first. Then I decided I didn't like that because I was kind of stuck on how to do it. And I also didn't really see this as like the home of someone who had a baby, or, maybe it could be eventually. But I feel like it's also going to be a sort of thing with like where the witch who lives here maybe found the baby, just like she found a lot of things in her home, including the pieces of her home. And I don't think it's like a nefarious thing, though. I think that she found the baby and truly wants to take care of it. And now we're moving into the kitchen. This ends up being sort of inspired by like the front end of a ship. And then it's got like a sort of cottagecore, like minty green, blue kind of vibe on like one half. But then the other half is like more of a brown, warm tone, because I figured like the part with the door is actually an actual part of the ship. Whereas like the rest of it maybe wasn't necessarily from a boat, but was still like pieced together, and she like sort of wallpapered it with one side. And of course I had to like put in like rugs on top of other rugs. And I ended up eventually putting like a fireplace on one side. And here's where I started really going in with like the whole this was a boat at one point in time theme. And I ended up using actually quite a bit from Movie Hangout, just because it's got all of those fun kooky patterns that I feel like the sim, the witch, if you will, who lives here, probably likes fun, cuckoo, crazy patterns and enjoys them quite a bit and is like drawn to them. So it's like kind of boho, kind of like whimsical, lots of pattern mixing going on inside this house. But I think it all worked out pretty well. I also mixed a lot of rugs. And some rugs that I like the one from Strangerville, which I think like the pattern is so fun. I think that the textures on them are cool, but they've got like little llamas on them, which is great because it's The Sims and they love llamas. But like sometimes I don't think it's really fitting for the build style, so I usually like will not use them. But anyway, here I'm going in and adding some spandrels across sections of the build. Because I figure if this was a boat, that there would be support beams like throughout to keep, the boat put together and supported, so that it doesn't end up like shifting around and smashing itself when the waves are hitting it on the rough seas. And I put like a little cauldron on the stove too, which I thought was fun. And we used a couple of shelves. I think the one is from Laundry Day. I think it's called like the Wicker Whims basket shelf. And I put like some sugar skulls up here. I don't remember if I ended up keeping that crystal skull or not. Because like I said at the beginning of the video, I don't know if this is really like a bad witch necessarily, but I do think she might have some sort of spooky things to help her with her witchcraft. And I, of course, had to put a fish tank in here because I've never used it in a build, I don't think. And how perfect is it for this seaside witch to have pet fish? Here's, I think, where I'm changing the swatches of the windows. And then here is where I am putting in a few more. I add the bathroom. I put in like some paintings. There's that one painting from Cats and Dogs where it's like a woman with a cat and like a diver's helmet, like an old-timey diver's helmet that I think is so cool. I knew I had to put it somewhere, so it ends up being in like the bedroom section of the build, which is like also what I view as like the old captain's quarters, which is the section you're seeing here. And it actually took me a while to decide what kind of bed that I wanted to put in here, because I knew it wanted it to be the bedroom, and I ended up trying to use that one, like I think it's from the Artist's Career. It's like a reward bed that has like the Starry Night on it. And like the Van Gogh sunflowers. I ended up deciding against it, and I went with like a patchwork quilt sort of thing. But that's not to say you couldn't change out the bed. You can change whatever you want if you decide to download this, which, hopefully some folks will. I think I still have a couple of builds that I need to put on the gallery. My apologies that I don't necessarily get them on right away, but it's like I build them and I film myself building them, and then I have to play test them. Usually I play test them a little bit whenever I make like the cinematic intros that I try to do. I guess some people call them video tours. Maybe I'll start calling them video tours. But that's kind of my play testing, as well as my how to like introduce the build in a fun, exciting way portion of this creative process. But we're finally getting into like the fine tuning of the details of the inside. You can see all of these like cuckoo crazy pattern curtains from Movie Hangout. I ended up using like a couch, one of the wicker couches from Movie Hangout with all the fun colors. I put like all kinds of like different rugs. It's still like a really blue heavy color tone throughout most of the house, like blue and greens. But I also did like a mismatch sort of thing, since it is sort of like all found objects and collected things. And then I added like some more spandrels across the way. The thing that I'm really going to have to playtest is like this couch and some other things. Here I am trying to like decorate the fireplace a little bit. I do end up using this really cool tall mirror that I think is from Growing Together. It's supposed to be like an heirloom piece, but it also seemed very like pirate ship mirror sort of vibes to me because it's like that carved intricate wood. She's got like a little ship up above her fireplace. Everything that's on the top shelf of the fireplace is really just kind of there as a placeholder so that stuff wouldn't automatically jump up there, because I eventually ended up adding a ceiling and then you can't see the stuff that's on the top of the fireplace. I think it's super great that stuff like will slot up there. I would love that we get more things where stuff slots into stuff where you would think you could put things, but until then, builders in The Sims know alt placing is the way to do it. So I'm used to it. And she's got like some trunks that I feel like she probably collected, some fun mirrors, of course, some witchy posters. We've got like the moon phase stuff from Crystal Creations. We have the Realm of Magic wall art pieces that have like the potion bottles and like the death flower. And I don't know. All kinds of crazy stuff in here. I've used like the hanging lamps from Cats and Dogs in here a lot. Cats and Dogs was really featured in this build. Werewolves was featured a little bit. Paranormal, of course. Cottage Living, I think. Maybe Country Kitchen. Anything that has like that sort of cozy, whimsical vibe is in this build. And I think it turned out super well. I don't even know what I could say initially inspired me to do it. It was just like a thought that I had. Speaking of build ideas, I do have a poll up right now, but it's from about 10 days ago, and I don't know how soon or like, how long stuff stays viewable on YouTube when it comes to like the community section of channels. If it's still there, by all means, feel free to vote on what you would like to see next. If not, don't worry about it. It's just something I'm trying to try out to get a little engagement. But also, just to help me out, if you like the video, comment on the video, share the video. I'm pretty sure all of those help boost the channel a little bit. We are trying to sort of get viewership up. Of course, we're still in our infancy, but I'm out here doing that thing, as the kids say. If you are a kid and do not say that, please do not take offense. And here I am finally doing the yard outside. We've got like... I just put all kinds of stuff out here. I knew that we had to have a clothesline. I feel like I do this in almost all of my builds because I admit that like The Sims 4 is like a modern game, but I kind of lean more period when it comes to my builds, which is why like I use a lot of old-timey looking items. And I finally got to use the globe bar because I felt like it was really perfect for this kind of build. Like, what better place to have a giant globe than in the home of someone who literally scavenges everything that they have in their house. And here I am putting in a little bit of additional final touches. There's probably some footage in here too of me doing like, one, the landscaping. I ended up using some hostas, which was super fun, from, I believe it's also Cats and Dogs, because I felt like they kind of have like, I assume that in real life they would grow in the sand, or they can. If you are a botanist and I am wrong, my apologies. But I also remembered that my mom growing up had them around like her trees and stuff, so it was kind of nice and nostalgic to put them in this build in that way. I also did the thing again like I did in the Wicked build where I took a lot of cauldrons, I sized them down with tool, I rotated them and stacked them inside of each other because I felt like this lady, she'd be keeping those cauldrons outside stacked up all higgledy-piggledy. Mainly just an excuse for me to say higgledy-piggledy. But we are coming up on the end of the build, guys. We're like in the last little bits here. You got to see me like finick with the roof a little bit and play around. And I'm just putting in some finishing touches. There might be a few more that I add off camera. But other than that, we are just about here. You can see I'm putting the little sign up that the witch has to let the townsfolk know she is open for business with her charms and her spells. And that's about it, guys. We're going to move into screenshots. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.